I'm looking forward to our next guest. We have Ben Mandrell, who's with LifeWay Christian Resources. Ben, thank you so much for being part of the Baptist Convention of Iowa annual meeting this year. And we know you've been to LifeWay for a little over a year now. And I'm guessing it's going pretty smooth, going as expected. You can talk about that a little bit more in just a few minutes. But first, go ahead and introduce yourself. How did you end up at LifeWay?
Hey, yeah, good to be with you guys. Ben Mandrell. I'm from the Midwest, so I'm relating to your audience well, I hope. I grew up in Northwest Illinois near the Quad City area there of Iowa, so very familiar with good Midwestern folks and churches there. Man, I was a church planter in Denver, Colorado, loving my life out there. We started a church in an elementary school, which went to a high school, which eventually went to a restored Walmart building. We were there 5 years and things were going great when God began to knock on my door about this LifeWay thing. I had never dreamed I would be the president of LifeWay. It wasn't on my radar at all. And yet once the search committee called me, I had one of those unshakable calling stories of 45 days in a row of sleepless nights asking the Lord, why is this so heavy on my chest? Why can I not release this? I love my church. I love my city. I love where I'm at. And yet my wife felt that God was calling us to go through the process. And then finally at the end, we just said, okay, we just have to trust that if we go through the process and they feel like I'm the person, we got to the place where we just said, Lord, if you open the door, we'll walk through it. And he opened the door. And so God called us to come to LifeWay, move our family back to Tennessee. I had pastored a church in Tennessee prior to going to Denver. So this is somewhat familiar territory, but we're in Middle Tennessee now, not West Tennessee, and leading LifeWay into a new season, a new era of ministry.
Yeah, wonderful. Now, so how long have you been there? You've been there a year. When was your start date?
14 months. So just a little over a year. It's been a wild and crazy year for everybody, I know.
Yeah.
But especially us over here at LifeWay.
Yeah, I want to hear about that. You know, in November of 2019, and you were just getting started. Who would have seen 3 months later all that's happened? So yeah, give us a little history of what were some of the big events, and actually talk through some of the big decision points that you've had in 2020.
Well, when I arrived at LifeWay, last fall, the organization was in a state of grief of losing the stores, like rightly so. Those 174 touch points in communities, and customers were sad to see the stores go, but the customers had voted loudly. They weren't buying in the stores anymore. They were wanting to do more shopping online. Customer patterns were changing. So when I arrived there, you had an organization that was ready to move on to the online channel and begin to reach more people through online. But it was a sad thing to see so many great people lose their jobs and lose the stores. And so there was a period where it was right to grieve and to appropriately recognize that chapter of ministry. So when I got to LifeWay, it was a lot of listening, a lot of loving, a lot of encouraging, a lot of people work, a lot of pastoring. And at the same time, through our church consulting arm, Auxano, we started to go through a kind of a re-envisioning of the future of LifeWay process. And so we started working on 4 things: mission, values, strategy, and measures. And so behind the scenes, we started reworking our mission statement, reworking our values, and then to get to strategy and how we're going to measure strategy. That was all going extremely well. We were getting a lot of momentum. Sales were up 12%. We were paying off the leases from the stores. It looked like we were moving pretty seamlessly from that chapter into the next. And then March happened and COVID hit and the whole thing got turned upside down. Every plan we had made suddenly changed. And I'm sure everybody listening can relate to this. We all had a lot of plans for the year before March. And so once that happened, obviously just watching the headlines, you all saw that we then began to go into a series of trade-off decisions that were necessary for us to really adapt to the environment that we found ourselves in. So in March, April, May, we ended up having to do a reduction in force, which was very heartbreaking year one for me to have to let good people go. We had to make some tough decisions around Ridgecrest, around our word search program, and some other things. And so, one thing that we did learn, and this is a leadership principle that I've gained this year, is that someone said, scarcity creates clarity. And it really is true. When you have less resources and you're having to make strategic, disciplined decisions, you get real clear, real quick about what's most important, and everything else begins to get pushed off to the edges. Lifeway's in a season where we're getting very clear on who we are, why God created us, and where we're going in the future. So that's a good thing, even though it's been painful.
Yeah, very good. I want to hear more about that. And maybe one way to contrast that is take your January 1st, 2020 vision frame and mission statement and talk about maybe January 2022 or something. Describe one and describe the other, and that will help us to maybe see some of the trends.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things we did this year was went back to our creation story. Lifeway was created, obviously, as the Sunday School Board to be an organization that filled up local churches with high quality, doctrinally sound content, recognizing that church leaders are crazy busy, immersed in relationships, trying to develop leaders and people. All church leaders need a place where they can find curated content that they can trust. They don't have time to read every word. They don't have that time to digest every study. They just need to know it's going to be solid. And so the main reason that people have shopped at Lifeway over the years or have used Lifeway Resources is because of the word trustworthy. We create stuff that's in line with Scripture, and people know that and they trust that. So going back to the mission of why we were created, that really has to continue to be the mission. That more than ever right now, Lifeway needs to get back in touch with church leaders who are in the front lines of ministry, who need content, tools, and resources. And we go build it in our shop so that they don't have to. And so what that's going to mean for us is that we've got to get smaller faster. We've got to get more in tune with local church leaders. We've got to get more relational, less corporate. We've got to get more warm, create warmth and rapport with the people who are making content decisions in the church. And the way we say it is we got to stop building spec houses and hoping people buy it. We need to start creating custom homes for people, the stuff that churches really need, that it's most helpful in their context. And so that's one of the passions I've brought to Lifeway, coming from the West, coming from Denver. I recognize that a lot of stuff that I purchased at Lifeway just didn't fit in my context because a lot of the people that I used as leaders in my church had little biblical background. And so Lifeway's taken a hard look at how do we create different kinds of resources for different kinds of contexts. For folks who are in different parts of the country. So I think going forward, we're going to have to become even more focused on making sure the content we create is most helpful and easy to use for the church. And so one of the most practical things I could talk about on here, Tim, is just the need for our website to make quantum leaps. Having such touch points in the stores, we didn't dedicate a ton of time to our website. Most people did their shopping in the store. Well, going forward, our website has to be super easy to use, easy to find stuff, easy to search, easy to purchase. It's quick, easy, and convenient. And we're putting a lot of energy and resources into that project right now.
Yeah,
so that's a little bit.
Talk a little bit about the customizing and contextualizing the material. What ideas do you have to get at the data you need in order to create the material for each region or each church type or church size?
Yeah, so you guys are in the Midwest, and so you get it. Churches in the Southeast have a different kind of leadership development strategy than those who are in the Midwest or in the West or in the Northeast. So, for example, when we were in Denver, one of Lifeway's most successful projects, the Gospel Project, it was tough for us to use because it's heady, it's very deep, it's meaty, and in some contexts where you have folks who've been around the Bible for years who are highly equipped, it really works well. It's plug and play. It wasn't that way for us. So we're trying to take a hard look at, okay, in interviewing church planters and leaders around the country that are from less churched areas, what does curriculum look like for them? How do we help them develop volunteers who may not know a lot about the major characters of the Bible, but are willing to serve in a classroom? And so how do we make it easier for the kids ministry leader, for the student leader, for the church leader? So those are some of the hard questions we're asking. And again, that means getting in touch with church leaders from other contexts. So if we were to create a curriculum like that, which we've looked at doing, we would not want it written by people who live in the South and attend Southern churches. We would want it written by people who are living and doing ministry in those contexts. And you being a former missionary in overseas, you get that, I'm
Yeah,
sure.
that's right, exactly. Well, let's talk about some other trends. Looking at 2020, there were all kinds of racial issues, and we have the election and how to deal with the COVID pandemic crisis. When you look at LifeWay in the next 2, 3, 4 years, what are some cultural trends that you're watching that may impact the ministry of LifeWay?
Yeah, so I hinted at one earlier. I mean, we're online right now. We're doing a virtual conference.
Right.
Tim, we just talked a minute ago, like it's hard to know what conferences and events look like in the future post-COVID, now that we've gotten so used to Zoom calls and being able to attend virtually and saving all the travel costs and time spent. So I think going forward, everything's got to have an online option. I think going forward, our online stuff has to be more convenient, more easy, just more easy to use. I think in terms of church practice, a year or two ago, to call a volunteer leadership meeting on Zoom was literally virtually unheard of.
Yeah. Right.
Very few churches could pull that off. It seems like going forward, using Zoom and video conferencing to train leaders, to connect with leaders, to provide content, that's going to be more and more accessible and comfortable for people. So everything we offer at LifeWay has to have a digital download. It has to be able to use digitally, including high quality video content. And so people are just deciding that they're okay receiving things in digital format. So we got to go there, and we got to be ready for people to use it. And at the same time, continue to serve people who like print, like paper, because some people prefer that as well. I mean, I'd rather have a book in my hands, but a lot of people would just as soon have their Kindle or have a device. Right. So that's changing the way we think about all of our content.
Right.
And obviously the events business is a question for the future. We're in that season of considering, what does it look like to have events in the next 5 years? What does that look like in terms of expectations and content? How's it delivered? I'm sure that's very similar to what many church leaders are thinking through these days.
Yeah, that's right. Well, talk about 2021 and events. What are some of the decision points you have and some of the events that you're thinking about having? Talk about 2021.
Well, we're trying to live with a joyful optimism, believing that the church is going to surge, the church is going to rebound. Obviously, Jesus said the gates of hell will not prevail against the church. So I feel personally that people are going to be hungry to gather when they can. So there's lots of questions around this vaccine. There's lots of questions about the upcoming election. I don't think anybody knows the future, but we all are hoping that the church can begin to rebound in 2021. We've called next year a bridge year for us. We don't expect to jump back to pre-COVID immediately. We're hoping by 2022 that happens. So we have a cautious optimism about next year. We are still registering for all of our summer camps next summer. In fact, our Fuge camps are filling up pretty quick. So we're still planning and hoping and believing that there's going to be in-person options for what we do next year. But at the same time, we're building lots of contingency plans. If it doesn't go this way, we've got levers we're ready to pull to hit budget.
Right.
Because I think you almost have to have a plan A and a plan B right now, right?
Right, that's right.
That's where we're at.
I'm sure that, let me talk about a different decision that was made in 2020 that I'm sure was very difficult, and that's Ridgecrest. And kind of go a little bit deeper into that. How did you come to the point of making the decisions you made about Ridgecrest?
Well, what a lot of people don't understand is literally the day after I took office, that hit my desk. There was concern about whether we could continue to be the primary steward of Ridgecrest because of the amount of costs associated with keeping up a facility of that size in North Carolina. Also, conference patterns are changing. People are not traveling all the way to North Carolina for conferences anymore. There's a lot of factors involved in that. But here was what was heartbreaking for me, Tim. I met my wife in camp ministry. We met at Kanakuk camps in Missouri. I love camp ministry. I've been a camp speaker every year at various camps. So we know how impactful it is. We know how powerful it is. Not only that, we took several trips to Ridgecrest and met with the teams there, and they are 5-star leaders out there. Like, they really are passionate and talented at what they do. So it wasn't like, oh, here's an albatross with really poor people leading it. Let's just, get rid of it or let it change hands. It wasn't that at all. In fact, it was just lots of prayer, lots of discussion. But as we began to meet with the leaders there and look at the future of Ridgecrest, we became convinced that a new day has come for Ridgecrest where it will go further faster if it has an owner that really focuses just on Ridgecrest. And with LifeWay coming back to the church leader as its primary focus, it was just sitting a little bit on the margin of what our core is. And so after much prayer and deliberation with discussion with our board, we felt like, let's open this up and see if God won't bring along a new group that would be willing to carry it forward. And that's exactly what he's done. And so we're more than thrilled about what's happening there. We think it's going to be incredible for the team. All those people, most of them are keeping their jobs. That, the mission's going forward, the conference center, the camps, it's all going forward. We're still going to rent it out a majority of next summer for our own events, we hope. So that's been really a God story, even though obviously it's a bittersweet moment.
Yeah. All right. Very good. Yeah. Those decisions are so hard, and it's hard to even communicate all the thinking behind them. And it's a much loved experience out there. And so, yeah, thank you for the update on that. So I have another question. You just got started, and a lot of unexpected things happen. Talk about what has sustained you during this time, or maybe talk about some of the leadership principles that you've learned during this time.
Yeah, I think every leader has a few, statements that drive them personally. The two defining statements for my leadership style are these. Number one, I heard it said, success is when the people who know you best respect you the most. I think that's a really healthy version of success in a day where we worry too much about what strangers on social media think of us and not the people who work directly with us or our own families. I think biblically speaking, when it says an overseer should be one who manages his own family well, there's a principle there. Yeah. So for me, success at LifeWay first and foremost means, do the people who have most access to me, do they feel the Holy Spirit operating in my life?
That's good.
Do they feel like I'm a spiritual person? Do they feel like I walk closely with the Lord? Is the Holy Spirit an important part of who I am, so it's important about who we are? Those are foundational questions that I think we skip over too quickly to get to strategy. So there's that. The second one is invite people into your life and not to a location. That has always been a passion for my wife and I. Evangelism, relational evangelism is a huge focus for us. And so how do we help an organization that's primarily geared toward discipleship also have a heartbeat for evangelism? How do we keep telling the story of lives that are changed, how the gospel is impacting people? If we don't regularly celebrate life change at LifeWay, it just becomes editing work.
Right.
It just becomes creating, books and pamphlets and, things that people read, but it's not really motivating to the people who make it. So, it's that classic principle of you got to get back to why you do what you do on a regular basis. So I feel like one of my big jobs as president is to simply keep reminding the team of what it is that we do and why it matters for the gospel, and not just simply for making money or creating revenue streams or even creating jobs. Those dreams are too small. So trying to keep us focused on some of those big things is really a passion of mine.
All right, very good. Well, I have one final question, Ben. Imagine you're in front of a group of Baptist Convention of Iowa pastors and leaders, and we're curious how we can connect with LifeWay, or what are some ways that LifeWay can help our ministries?
Well, first of all, I just want to thank you for your patience. We're in a season of really reinventing this thing to make it a new paradigm that better fits the needs of local church leaders. And so we still have a lot of work to do. I hope you won't give up on us, because we are in the midst of, there's a lot happening behind the scenes that most people don't see, but we're a year or two away from this whole thing looking, feeling, and functioning very differently. So I hope you won't give up on us. Thanks for your patience. Number two, Tim, I told you this before, I really want to get there. One of my passions is building relationships with people, and I'm a leader that likes to lead from knowledge of where people are. And one of the reasons I'm excited about de-emphasizing a headquarter building, which is what I'm leading us through right now, is if we can shed the need for a large footprint in downtown Nashville and begin to allow people to be out more, travel more, be in regions more, I think we'll be in better touch with church leaders from the Midwest and the West and the Northeast. I've been very concerned that when we all live in Nashville, Tennessee, and we attend churches in Nashville, Tennessee, but we're making products that are supposed to serve the broader church, I just wonder if that's possible. And so a big heartbeat of mine is, and I had lots of travel plans for the fall, all canceled. I just get out there and meet some of your pastors and meet some of your church leaders and begin to listen and hear and experience the culture there so that we can be sure we're building stuff here that makes a difference for your churches in Iowa. And you're not getting something that's made for Nashville and you're trying to tweak it and make it fit in your context, but it's square peg, round hole. I really hope we can change that.
Yeah, that's wonderful, Ben. You know, I really appreciate that, and we will be patient. We're so grateful for the many decades of great products and service and connection that we've had with LifeWay. And we thank you that God has put you in this position for this time, and it's very different than any of us expected. And but grateful that you're there, that you're leading, that you're focusing, and praying for you as you make hard decisions. Strategy is saying yes to things, but it's saying no to things that sometimes are difficult and involve lives and even people who've been connected for years and years through faithful service. And those are tough decisions, and we'll be praying for you as you make those. So thank you for your time today, Ben, and for being part of our annual meeting.
Can I just say a quick word of encouragement to your pastors?
Yes, please.
You know, having been a pastor for 17 years, I just want to say thank you to everybody who's continuing to serve faithfully in their churches. You know, we pastors, we're energized by the gatherings. We're energized by the opportunity to deliver the word and preach the word in season. It feels out of season right now. And it's hard work, and preaching to a camera with a sparsely populated room, it's not as energizing. It's harder work than it used to be, but it's no less important. And so I just want to thank your pastors for being faithful, your church leaders for being faithful. God's going to see us through this. On the other side of this, there's going to be a lot of great ministry lessons that we can take forward. And so thanks for allowing us to partner with you. I appreciate all of you, what you do.
All right. Thank you, Ben. Thank you for your time today.